Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and today we're talking about Phantasy Star Online, that action-focused RPG from Sega, and after years and years it has finally just come to the West on an absolute trash Windows Store version that I couldn't in any right mind recommend you to attempt to use. The original game released 8 years ago in 2012 and only just now came to the West with this terrible launch. But then a Steam version has been released to address these issues, and then there's this little thing called New Genesis, which was revealed during the 2020 Xbox Showcase event. It's a standalone game in an entirely new engine set 1,000 years after the events of PSO2. Yes, it's a sequel for next-gen gaming that hopefully we won't have to wait 8 years for its launch in the West after it releases elsewhere. From the trailer alone, you can see a massive amount has been overhauled entirely. It has a completely new combat and new visual style to go alongside its many new planned features. Phantasy Star Online 2 is almost a decade-old RPG with great concepts and beloved by its fans, but let's be honest, it is quite dated now. To see a real full throttle sequel like this, it has me very excited, and for good reason. Not only will New Genesis be free to play, but yeah, it's going to be a global launch, and hopefully that means a Steam version and none of that Windows mess. Today I'm going to break down all of the stuff we know, the piles of information that we have about New Genesis, into a simple everything you need to know video, so let's get started. Now originally there was this fantastic but rather short trailer showing the game and its general vibe, plus some solid gameplay highlights, but it didn't really give us any raw information and meant that we definitely didn't have any proper details. Fortunately, there was a follow-up video and some new information to answer a lot of questions that we had. Firstly, the setting and story of New Genesis is directly linked to PSO's 2 storyline, which was released originally in episodes. The NA version of the game is currently working its way through these episodes to catch up to the Japanese version's progress. Genesis is planned to launch sometime after the end of episode 6, which is when the West will have synced up with the East officially. This gives us a bit of reasonable awareness for the release of Genesis if things do go according to plan. The final events of PSO2, without spoilers, basically had the Arcs fighting the enemies known as the Foul Spawn, and it wasn't exactly going well. New Genesis is set 1,000 years after the final battle in the series and will follow a new story that is directly linked to the events of PSO2's. And this is also interesting for PSO2 as a game. With its story complete, they still plan to run the game, but interestingly, before the release of Genesis, they're updating the current PSO engine so that it matches New Genesis more. From the gameplay we've seen in the trailer, we know things are going to be different with the combat systems, the movement, the general pace of the gameplay, so it might be an exciting time soon for PSO players after episode 6. Now let's pay attention to this new gameplay in New Genesis, in the new engine, making this much faster and rather freestyle gameplay possible. Much less rooted and slow, we're much more mobile, and it's much more pleasing on the eye. It looks a lot of fun. We'll be seeing some kind of new revamped battle system, though it's still at the core an action RPG. We're going to be flying around that combat way more, fighting new enemy types called the Dolls, these colossal style creatures that seem like they can actually be pretty agile despite their height and size. We don't have a lot of details about the combat yet though, so hopefully soon we can talk more about that. Two other major details for the sequel would be that we saw a lot of players running around together compared to the previous limit of 4, so seemingly they've raised that to a new unknown number, which should make for a bigger, more multiplayer experience. And then the potential of open world this time. They refer to this game as a open field online RPG that's big enough to require new ways to travel that world through the use of extended sprinting known as the Photon Dash, or the big leaps from high up places and gliding with the Photon Glide. Our freedom of movement is important because they're expanding the playable world like this, but the question is, how big will it be? It's a good new direction though, one that I'm interested to see more of. Visually, with that new engine, it looks really good. It's a totally new style that sims well, very anime-esque with its characters, but set in a very realistic looking environment with a day and night cycle. There's going to be more dynamic weather elements too, and the world itself is said to be more progressive. The fields are going to be much more detailed along with being vast. Very importantly though, we got a pretty good look at the massive new character creator. They've attempted a higher fidelity to the characters and they've certainly achieved it with these super anime sprites, coming with way more options with say hairstyle, different sizing, the new accessories with their new placement options, but most importantly guys, their fingers can move. Wow! I joke, but it does look good, and compared to PSO2's creator, I mean, you would barely be able to tell that they're from the same universe. This is a massive step forward, and one I'm very excited for. Surprisingly, there's actually going to be some data crossover between the games. Characters made in New Genesis are actually compatible with your current PSO2 characters, so you could bring them with you if you want to. Plus, other data is going to carry over too, like weapons, magic, and units. But obviously, these are different games, so I imagine they're going to work separately in whatever universe you're currently in. On the other hand, things like experience points, skills, and currency are going to be locked to each specific version, as they are ultimately different games, and it certainly would be lame to have someone day one be really ahead of everyone else because they played a lot of PSO2 on day one of New Genesis. Outside of that, we have some final extra details for you. As I've said, New Genesis is its own free-to-play game, with the business model remaining the same as it was. PSO2 will continue to run and receive support from the devs after the launch of Genesis, and there's also that incoming overhaul to make the world and gameplay match New Genesis. The release is planned for sometime 2021, which is a lot sooner than I expected when we first had this announcement, but we'll have to wait and see which quarter this release is actually planned for. Lastly, the game is releasing on Windows, Xbox One, and next-gen Xbox Series X, and we have no word if we can expect a Steam release, but we can only hope thanks to the PSO2 recently releasing on Steam. But there you have it, all the details I currently was able to find for New Genesis. If there's anything else that maybe I missed I didn't include in this video, please drop it in the comments and let us know. I'm very interested to see how Genesis does as a game. It has now been 9 years since the last release in the series, and yet there's still a fan base and people still playing the original Japanese version, and now loads of people playing this new Western version. So I have high hopes and I'm looking forward to trying it. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.